How's it going, everybody? My name is Philip, and today I'm going to be reacting to the July Revolution of 1830. Now, I believe this is a French history thing. I don't know what it is. Typical American stuff. When it comes to other things that is not world wars, or I guess, is this the French Revolution now that I think about it? I don't know. I have no idea. I should probably look at the description. People think of the 1789 one. They assume French just... Okay, so I'm guessing this is a part of the French Revolution, or a different version, a different side of it. So in the description, it says, when people think of the French Revolution, they think of the 1789 one. They assume us French just cut our king's head off. That sounds familiar. Among a few thousand more. And presto, we now have a republic. But that's far from true. In fact, it would be 77 years before France got rid of its last monarch, thanks to numerous revolutions, one of which was the July Revolution, better known as Les Trios. I'm not even. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. I'm not going to read all of that. I'll just watch the video. That's a lot of reading, and I don't have a lot of time to read that. I'm actually surprised I didn't mess up that reading right there. So that is a bit true. That I do vaguely remember them cutting off the king's head. Wait, okay, now I'm starting to... Didn't they do the same with a woman, Marie Antoinette? Was that? Did she get... Nah. Hold up. I need to look this up. Okay. Marie Antoinette. Oh, this one might... No, it's not. It's not going to be covered in this. I was about to say, she died in 1793. How did she die? Yeah, okay. So Marie Antoinette was beheaded 9 months after the execution of her husband. Okay. So... Because I do remember something like this. Maybe it's because I watched Doctor Who and it had something about Marie Antoinette in it. I'm guessing. What do I know? I'm an American. So let's learn about some French history in the July Revolution of 1830. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see... if there's anything that I could remember. Again, I don't think so, but let's check it out. As always, you can click the link in the description down below to watch this video as well, if you want to watch it and support the channel and check out more of their content, which I highly suggest and I highly recommend. So let's check out some new history that I probably have never heard of.
When people think of the French Revolution, they think of this one, the 1789 one. They assumed that us French just cut our king's head, among a few thousand more, and presto, we now had a republic. But that's far
this is what I just read.
In fact, it would take 77 years, 2 empires, 3 revolutions, 7 coalition wars, and 9 monarchs before France got rid of its last one, Napoleon III, in 1870. As a point of comparison, the 20th century started just 30 years later. So us French truly had to fight for our dear republic, and one of those fights was the July Revolution, also known as Les Trois Glorieuses.
Yeah, I would have butchered that if I tried to say that.
This video is part of a multi-channel collaboration called Project Revolution. If you enjoyed this video and wish to learn more about the cultural, economic, technological, and political revolutions of our history, then make sure to check out the playlist in the description. On June 18, 1815, in a desperate attempt to regain an upper hand during the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon commits his last reserves, which includes his most elite troops, the Old Guard. They march towards the English center in hopes of a breakthrough.
I've heard of Waterloo.
British troops rise from behind bushes and release a devastating onslaught. In one volley, 300 French soldiers fall, including their commanders. Leaderless and overwhelmed, the French troops start retreating. At the view of the retreating Old Guard, which had been deemed invulnerable until then, panic spread among the French army, and the retreat quickly turns into a rout, as men scream, "La garde recule, sauf qui peut." Victorious, the coalition forced Napoleon into exile on the island of St. Helena, where he would die 6 years later, and imposed on France the terms of the Treaty of Vienna. This brought France's borders back to their 1791 position and restored the House of Bourbon on the throne in the person of Louis XVIII. Fun fact, Louis XVIII picked the white flag as the new flag of France, and it will remain as such until the July Revolution. At this point, us French make it way too easy to make unoriginal surrender jokes. As a new king, Louis XVIII was rather keen when it came to making concessions to the people of France, likely seeing how badly he had turned for his older brother who had failed to do so. He accepted la Charte constitutionnelle, which guaranteed the rights gained during the Revolution, and maintained most of the reforms that had been done during and after the Revolution, including the Napoleonic Code. And so his reign was marked by relative peace and stability, which ushered in the beginnings of a French Industrial Revolution. However, on September 16, 1824, he died.
I'm sorry. That doesn't seem very, what's the word? That doesn't seem very, fuck. Not gonna lie, this doesn't seem very, I guess, it does seem useful if it was flipped, you know, where the steam's coming out from the back, but if you're trying to see where you're going, it's not helping at all. I like the concept though. Just either have the smoke come out even higher up, or put it behind you, okay? Because that's a mess.
At 68, childless, and so the throne was given to his younger brother Charles X. On the 27th, the new king arrived at Paris to popular acclaim, but that would quickly change as he soon embodied the worst of the Ancien Régime. It started with the choice of his prime minister, a leader of the ultra-royalist faction named Joseph de Viel. This was quickly followed by extremely unpopular legislation, such as his decision in April 1825 of compensating nobles whose estate had been confiscated during the Revolution. This would end up costing close to 1 billion francs, or more than half of France's GDP back then. To add insult to injury, on the same month, the king's government passed anti-blasphemy laws with punishments ranging from perpetual forced labor up to death through decapitation. And while the law was more symbolic than anything, it was seen as an attempt to pander to the clergy, and so was a direct affront to the equality of religious beliefs imposed by La Charte. Furthermore, the method of execution wasn't even done by guillotine, but by sword, a method that reminded everyone all too much the gruesome executions of the Ancien Régime. The French didn't take lightly.
Okay. So, so when I was younger, I went to England, Ireland, and Wales when I was like 15, 16. 15. Anyways, point is, I remember someone talking about beheading, and I remember we went to like a medieval castle. It obviously got turned into a museum at the time. And seeing how blunt the swords are, obviously due to it being in a museum, made me wonder, how often did they keep it sharp, or did they just like hack away? Because I think I also remember hearing something about if they did too many, then obviously the sword would get blunt by near the end. So when they're trying to chop the dude's head off or the woman's head off, they had to like go like a bunch of times because the sword just at that point has been so blunted or some shit. And I'm just like, holy crap, that's dark and creepy. Oh, excuse me. That's just dark as hell.
These attempts at undermining their constitution, and as a result, the popularity of the parliament soared at the expense of the king and his ministers. This growing hostility was best illustrated on April 16, 1827, when the king decided to review the National Guard on the Champ de Mars. There, he was greeted by a cold silence, with many spectators going as far as refusing to remove their hats. Finally, some members of the National Guard started screaming, "Down with Viel! Down with the ministers!" Ooh. Outraged, the king disbanded the National Guard the following day, but he failed to disarm them, a mistake that would later cost him dearly. On November of that same year, legislative elections occurred. These were a huge blow against the king, as the ultra-royalists lost 228 deputies to the benefit of liberals, who gained 153. It's worth noting that these liberals weren't really that liberal, and were actually royalists too. Les Doctrinaires, as they were called, favored a constitutional monarchy, and were led by Lafayette, who had staunchly opposed the Jacobin Club during the Reign of Terror.
Oh my gosh. So, for anyone that's watched Hamilton, I've never actually, I haven't watched it live, I watched it on Disney Plus. Is that the Lafayette? That's the Lafayette. Right there. American Revolution hero. Okay.
This wasn't a fight of republicanism versus royalism,
Interesting.
but rather on the appropriate degree of royal power. Following this devastating defeat, the king attempted to introduce new laws to tighten censorship, especially against the press, in order to curb growing violent criticism against the government and church. However, the deputies objected so violently that the humiliated government had no choice but to withdraw the proposal. In response, Villèle gave his resignation to the king, who replaced him by a more moderate minister, Le Vicomte de Martignac, in hopes of bridging the gap between the two royalist factions. However, under attacks from both left and right-wing extremists, and with little support from the king, who disliked his policies, de Martignac was soon deposed following a defeat on one of his proposals. The king then replaced him with the Prince de Polignac, and oh boy, if that didn't cause an uproar. You see, he was the son of La Duchesse de Polignac, aka the most hated woman of the Revolution. She was the favorite of Marie Antoinette, to the point of being accused of being her mistress, and embodied everything that was wrong with the aristocracy: nepotism, decadence, and idleness. So, understandably, many of the king's opponents weren't too happy about that. On March 1830, in an attempt to be ever so unpopular, the king threatened the opposition in a speech to the assembly. In retaliation, 221 liberal deputies voted in favor of a motion of no confidence. The motion began in a delightfully sarcastic manner. "Sir, it is with deep gratitude that your loyal subjects, together around your throne, heard from your prestigious mouth the flattering testimony to the confidence that you granted them. Happy to inspire such feelings, sir." Despite all this, however, Charles X somehow believed he was still popular among the French people, or at least the few who had the right to vote, which is all that matters after all. And so he dissolved the assembly in hopes that a new election would restore the balance in favor of the ultra-royalists. It did not. On July 1830, these new elections occurred, and to the surprise of the king, it was a devastating defeat, as the Liberals obtained 274 of the 428 chairs of the assembly. The king, however, was persuaded that no compromise could be made without threatening his throne. As a result, he remained determined to keep his ministers, stating, "If I yield to their demands, they will treat me like my poor brother." His first retreat was the signal of his loss. Finally, bolstered by the news of the recent capture of Algiers, Charles X decided to further strengthen his power by releasing the infamous Saint-Cloud ordinances on the 25th of July, a Sunday. The first ordinance suspended the freedom of press. The second dissolved the assembly, even though it had been elected less than a week before. The third reduced the number of deputies from 428 to 258. But mostly it removed the right of vote of the commercial bourgeoisie, which tended to be much more liberal than other electors. This reduced the
probably didn't go
electoral
well.
body from under 100,000 to a mere 40,000. Keep in mind, France's population in 1831 was close to 33.6 million.
Damn.
Democracy at play. That very night, the ordinances were sent to the printer of Le Moniteur, the official newspaper of the government, so that it could be published on the following day. The whole affair was done in the utmost secrecy, so much so that the military authorities weren't informed of it and were therefore unable to strengthen security within the capital. Smart. Monday. The Parisians read Le Moniteur. At first, they're surprised, but that surprise quickly turns into disgust.
Yeah.
Like vigilantes in the night, waiting for their call, they quickly respond to the clamors of revolt. It starts with the commercial bourgeoisie, who protest by refusing to lend in La Bourse and by shutting down their factories. As a result, unemployment, which had risen throughout the summer, spikes. As historian Philippe Mansell puts it, large numbers of workers therefore had nothing to do but protest. That evening, Paris went to sleep in a decideful calmness. As Le Préfet de Police writes, "The most perfect tranquility continues to reign in all parts of the capital." Tuesday. Over 50 newspapers refused to submit to the new ordinances as they published
Nice.
inflammatory material against the king. When the local police attempt to seize their presses, they are attacked by a vicious mob, screaming, "À bas les Bourbons! Vive la Charte!" By 5 p.m., the first barricades are risen, and soon after, the first altercations between rioters and soldiers begin. From the rooftops, Parisians throw rocks, roof tiles, and more to the patrolling troops. At first, the soldiers fire in the air to scare them off, but soon they aim to kill. Little by little, weapons emerge among the protestant crowd, likely coming from the National Guard that had been dismissed just 3 years prior. With these weapons, the rioters gather even more by pillaging armors and barracks. The fighting continues long into the night, and by the end, 22 rioters are dead.
Damn. So I will say, I think it's funny how people tend to start taking stuff away, or like they're so like disconnected from their people that they start taking things away. It's like, oh, it'll be fine. They'll just do it as I say, and then the people is like, excuse us? No. We ain't having this. It's almost, I hate to say it, but this it doesn't remind me, but little bits remind me of the January 6th bullshit that happened here in the U.S. just this last year, where, except for in this case, in the U.S.'s case, the dumbass, it was stupid dumbass people that were doing it rather than people that are trying to fight for freedom. You know, people trying to fight for bullshit and keep some random vagina grabbing. Let's just leave it at that, because I'm sure he'll find a way to sue people, including myself, for defamatory remarks or some shit. But let's ignore that now. Again, I don't know what the fuck the king was thinking that all this would have been fine.
One of their bodies is picked up and dragged around the city to incite further outrage. The revolution has finally started.
Okay, sorry, I just paused it right after. I would have been pissed seeing them drag a dead body around. It's like, oh, you think that's going to stop me? I don't think so. Y'all disrespecting us. We have the people. You, on the other hand, have the weapons. But once you don't have the ammo, what you gonna do?
Wednesday. From the safety of his Saint-Cloud palace,
Jeez,
where he had
day
emitted
two.
his ordinances, the king attempts to quell the rebellion by sending General Marmont to Paris. Marmont, however, is severely outnumbered, as most of his troops are used to the conquest of Algiers. Meanwhile,
That's what
in
I'm
the
saying.
capital, anti-Bourbon sentiments turns into calls for the guillotine. And at 11 a.m., the king's ministers, including Polignac, are forced to hide in the Palais des Tuileries, along with Marmont, who now informs his king, "Sir, it is no longer a riot, it is a revolution."
Yo, I like that.
In the narrow streets, the French troops are hopeless as revolutionaries fire down at them and then quickly disappear. Bolstered by the once soldiers of the National Guard who had come to join them in their old uniforms, the Parisians captured the Hôtel de Ville.
Nice.
There, they raise the tricolor flag and ring the bell of Paris.
I take it
Yet,
it's the red,
despite all
white, blue
this,
flag.
the king and his prime minister refuses to see anybody.
Of course.
Thursday. Poet Alfred de Vigny writes, "They do not come to Paris. People are dying for them. Not one prince has appeared. The poor men of the guard, bound and without orders, without bread for 2 days, hunted everywhere and fighting." In just 1 day and night, 4,000 barricades have been erected across Paris
Jeez.
and are now manned by 30,000 revolutionaries.
Okay. So at what point do you abandon your orders and use your brain and be like, yo, why are we fighting? Like, what are they doing for us right now? Like, do people think that? Okay, that's another thing. Do people think that, or do they just blindly follow? I've been reading to do stuff on North Korea for a while, and it kind of reminds, like, just following orders kind of just reminds me of North Korea, where they're just believing all the bullshit, but that's their normal, which is crazy to think about, you know? So it's like they don't question it because that's all that they've ever known. So is that almost the same here in the sense of we need to make sure that we create order rather than chaos. So we must protect the king because he'll bring order. Is that what some of the soldiers were thinking? Because I feel like at some point the soldiers got to find out the king's not gonna do shit. The king's not coming down. No prince. Nothing's coming down to help us to give us motivation to continue. Granted, obviously, there's not a way to communicate that through the ranks of 1830s, you know? So it's kind of hard to say that the king's not coming down, or, yeah.
Marmont receives no orders nor reinforcements. In the early afternoon, the Louvre is easily captured as the Swiss Guard flees without fighting. The memory of their brothers who had stood their ground in 1792, only to be torn to pieces by the mob, is all too vivid.
Just say,
Quickly
fuck
after,
that.
the Tuileries Palace is captured. Paris has fallen. The liberals impose a provisional government, and Lafayette is sent to calm the mobs before the whole affair degenerates, like in 1792. God forbid the revolutionaries succeed in creating another republic. The cousin of the king, the Duke of Orleans, is chosen by the provisional government as the new king of France, Louis-Philippe Ier. The new king arrives at Paris on July 31st to popular acclaim. Wisely, he further bolsters that popularity by painting himself as the people's king. To do so, he renames himself as King of the French and not King of France, and adopts the tricolor flag of the revolution. On August 2nd, Charles X and his son abdicate any rights to the throne of France and flee to England, thus extinguishing forever the Bourbon dynasty in France. A dynasty which, excluding the revolution and Bonaparte, had reigned since Henri IV, almost 250 years ago. Like teenage intercourse, the revolution had finished as quickly as it had started. Nevertheless, it sparked the November Rising in Poland against the rule of Russia, which led to nothing more than the death of 40,000 Poles and the total assimilation of the country by Tsar Nicholas I. More successful, however, was the August Revolution that occurred in Brussels and would end up creating a little country you may know as Belgium, which my endless love for French fries, comic strips, and silly accents will always be thankful for. And this, my friend, is the story of the July Revolution, better known as Les Trois Glorieuses. And while it may not be the most significant historical event in France, it helps cement the idea that the ideas of the revolution were a permanent thing, and that anybody who tried to change that would soon be overwhelmed by barricades. So stay tuned till next time as France goes through yet another revolution. But until then, make sure to check out my friend at Ancient Accounts as he discusses the much more violent First French Revolution. And if you want an overall timeline of every French Revolution, then make sure to check out my friend at Useful Charts, who has produced an excellent video on the subject. As usual, every link is in the description. Well, this was Barris. I will see you soon. But until then, my friends, merde.
Okay, so that was definitely interesting. For some reason, the thing that I kept thinking of was Les Mis. Which was that? I know it's supposed to be. It's not. It's a fake. It's a movie and whatnot and play and whatnot. But whatever. But is it supposed to be based around the time of this revolution or the bigger, well-known French Revolution? I don't know why I just kept thinking of Les Mis when I was watching this. I don't know if that has anything to do with this at all. But yeah, I mean, like I said, just for some reason, I haven't seen Les Mis in forever, but that was the first thing that came to mind, like partway through, and whatnot. But that was definitely very interesting. Also, didn't realize, and I think a lot of people don't realize here in the U.S., that there was multiple revolutions in France. I didn't know that. I feel like a lot of people just think of, okay, well, they had the French Revolution, and then all of a sudden they became, France. The France that I guess we know now, in a sense. But that is not the case. So it's definitely, I feel like it's definitely interesting to learn more about the history of the world. This was definitely very well put together, very well educative. No, that's not a word. It was very educational, and I really enjoyed it. I should actually look at some more French stuff, honestly, not gonna lie. The Battle of Midway, that's told from a Japanese perspective. Oh, that's interesting. I could probably check that out. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section below. If there's any other revolution type of stories that you'd like me to react to, or not necessarily like actual historical revolutions that's happened, some of the other revolutions in France. Let me know in the comment section below. Is there anything that happened in Australia or New Zealand? I'm just trying to think because I always tend to go to Australia and New Zealand when I start thinking of historical stuff. But Spain, Portuguese, Spain, Ukraine, like there's so much that I don't know about Europe. Obviously, I would love to go and visit pretty much every country in Europe, which will take forever, and I don't have the money, sadly. But I would love to learn more history. It's funny because history was one of my favorite subjects in school, and I don't remember any of it. I think I've hit my head way too many times to remember a lot of the stuff going on. So it's definitely very interesting. Also, I don't know why, but for some reason I thought Napoleon was a little bit later in the 1800s, like closer to 1900s. I don't know why I thought that. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. If there's anything else you'd like me to react to, let me know in the comment section below. And I will see you guys next time.